Hi everyone, welcome to another video on making Power BI dashboards for team sports. Today we're going to go through how to make a drill report like this one, where you're going to be able to compare all the different drills that you've done during your training session. You're also going to be able to go back and store all of your sessions in the same dashboard so that you can access any session that you want and compare the drills within each session. What we'll need today is a database just like this one, which is just a data dump of all my GPS data from training sessions. That's going to include my drill dates, my player names, and the drill titles, most importantly. And then what I have here is just an export of all the metrics that my StatSports GPS provides me. And it's important that you just include as many metrics as you can in your database so that you can always go back and include new metrics in case you haven't looked at them before. So in here, for example, I have all of my sessions imported here with all my drill titles. In this case, for example, I did a 7v3, a defensive transition, and then this is just a trim for my full session data. So this is the document that we're going to import into our Power BI database. So open your Power BI and go to Get Data, Excel, find your drill database and select your Excel file sheet. Perfect. So you'll see all the database with all the column names right here on your right side under fields. And the first thing we're going to do is just import a simple text box with the title of our report. So I'm just going to call that drill reports. And I'm also going to insert on the top right of my dashboard, I'm going to put just an image which is just going to be from your drill logo or your team crest or whatever you want to put here. I'm just going to use this football, for example. Very good. So the first thing that we want to include in our reports is a slicer, which is just go to visualizations and find the slicer icon. The slicer is going to enable us to select exactly what training sessions we're going to view in this report. So you know that this report, you're actually going to be using it for all of your training sessions, so you don't have to make a different report every day. This is going to save you a lot of time to just have one dashboard with all of your data, and you insert a slicer that's going to enable you to select what data you want to see. So I'm just going to search my variable, which is called drill date, on my fields, and I'm going to drag that across to my field box. Inside the slicer, I'm going to go to the down arrow and I'm going to select drop down so I can select exactly what session I want to view. So in this case, I only have 3 sessions in my dashboard, and you can see that by just selecting which training session I want to see, that's going to filter all my data inside here so I can view exactly that. And as an option, you can also go to Format, go to Selection Controls, and you're going to turn off the multi-select with Control key. So some of you might be interested in comparing drills across 2 different sessions. So if you've done a small-sided game on the 5th of September and you want to compare that same drill with a drill due date on another date, you can select 2 different dates and compare the drills within those 2 dates that you select. This is completely up to you. I think it's worth leaving that on just in case that you want to compare different sessions. And in case you just want to look at one session, all you have to do is deselect the current selection and then just go to another one. And we're now going to put another slicer, which is going to be for our drill titles. So if you go to slicer again, I'm just going to put that under the drill date slicer, and in here I'm going to put my drill title variable and drag that across to the field box. So in this case, you can see that it's always going to show me the drill titles that I have inside of this date. So if I go to another date, it's going to change the drill names that I have for the exact date. So in here, you want to do the same thing again in terms of going to Format, Selection Controls, and deselect, toggle off the multi-select with Control key. So this is going to allow you to go to one session and then select what drills you want to actually view inside of your report. Next, I'm going to put a couple of pie charts on the top, which are just going to serve us as like a quick overview or a quick brief of our drills and how our session looks like in terms of a drill breakdown. So I'm going to select my pie chart. I'm going to put that just here on top, make it a bit bigger. And I'm going to use the drill title as my legend. Next, I'm going to use total distance as my variable for this pie chart. So just find total distance and drag that across to your values box. So this is going to give me a good indicator of what my total session is and where the load is actually coming from each drill. What's the different contribution for each drill in terms of the total load. So I'm just going to modify this chart a bit to make it a bit cleaner. I'm going to take the legend off. And I'm going to modify the data label so that it shows category and data label. And also you can see that the units are actually coming in as 50K, 16K. So I'm going to change that data label to display no units. And one very important thing that you have to do is that you make sure that your value, which is total distance, you show that as an average. So Power BI is always going to give you, by default, it's going to display the sum of values, but you want to make sure that's the average of your team for each drill. And I'm also going to change that title. I'm going to put just total distance. And this is just to make it look a bit cleaner. Very good. So if you're happy with that, you can go for a pie chart that looks just like this one. If you're happy with the labels the way they are, you can have this type of label, which is the category and the data value. Another option would be to just put the data value. Maybe just put that inside of the chart, and then you would have to toggle on your legend. So that's another option, but as you can see in my case, it doesn't look good at all. I think the best way is just to leave the legend off and keep that data, the label style, as category and data value. So now I'm going to create another pie chart. I'm just going to copy and paste this one to make it a bit quicker for me. And I'm going to use another variable. Just for this example, I'm just going to use HMLD. So I know there's currently a lot of different views regarding HMLD in current literature. I'm just going to use it as an example. Even though it might not be the best indicator for metabolic power or metabolic cost of the player, I still think it's a good indicator of high intensity actions, but I don't want to get too deep into that. So I'm just going to use these two indicators on the top of my dashboard that are just going to give us, like I said, the quick overview of our session and our drills. And now I'm going to put 3 graphs at the bottom that are going to give me a little bit more detail on the load that came from each drill in different metrics. So my next graph is going to be a bar chart. So bar charts are better than column charts when you're actually analyzing fewer variables. So for example, if you're analyzing a full set of players that are like 15, 20 players, you want to use a column chart just because there's a lot of different variables in that x-axis. But if you're only using a few variables to compare, which are your drills, it's a lot better and nice looking and represents better our data if you use a bar chart. So I'm just going to go for the bar chart, selecting. And I'm going to use drill title as our axis field. And the metric that I'm going to represent in this graph are going to be accelerations and zones part from zone 3 to zone 6. So I'm just going to look for that here. So just my high intensity accelerations. I'm going to include in the same graph my decelerations in high zones. So there's two options for you guys to view your data. You can either view it as a stacked bar chart, which is gonna stack accelerations and decelerations on the same bar, or you can use the clustered bar chart, which is gonna separate those two. So that just depends on your viewings on acceleration and deceleration. If you just want to view it as a neuromuscular load indicator, then you can just simply use the stacked bar chart. But I've noticed some clients that actually like to see the relationship between acceleration and deceleration to see the nature of the drill. So that's completely up to you whether you want to use a stack or a clustered. I'm going to make that clean up again, just going to take off the legend and change the drill title. Perfect. And I'm also going to take off the title of each axis. So any information that you have on your graph that you don't really need, it's not going to provide you with anything, just take it off so that you can actually have more time and space to actually represent the information that you want to deliver. You don't want to put anything unnecessary and excessive it's just going to make your report look bad. And then finally, and very important thing that you cannot forget, is to change the value to display the average. And I'm also going to include the data labels inside this graph, just because it's a bit hard to know exactly the number of the variable that you have. So just go back to your format, go to data labels and turn on. I'm going to take away those decimal places, just set at 0. I'm going to increase the text size so it's nice and clear. And you have the option, I like how it looks inside of the bar, but you also have the option of making that position on the inside, on the outside, inside end if you want, inside center, whatever you need. I'm just going to leave that as auto, which is just going to automatically set the data labels to be according to the graph so it doesn't overflow the numbers. So if I were to change my selection of drill, for example, that is also going to show me the label in the best way possible. So I'm happy with that. Now for my next graph, I'm going to select a cluster bar chart. I'm going to put my drill title, same as before, into my axis field. And for this graph, I'm going to reflect high-speed running. Drag that onto my value. And I'm also going to reflect my sprints also into my value. Set this as average. And I'm going to clean up again just by taking off my legend, taking off my axis titles, and changing the title of the graph. So you can change that according to whatever you feel looks better for your reports. Now in this case, I chose the cluster bar chart just because the two variables are not exactly related to each other as accelerations and decelerations. These are two separate variables, so high speed running and sprints have different speed thresholds. So that's why I chose to separate those two. Like before, I'm going to make sure I put my data labels on that. So if I find my data labels, turn on. Delete the decimal places and increase the text size a bit. You can see that now it's set as automatic, but it's actually putting the variables, the data labels, showing them on the outside. So So it's better to just leave that at auto, just to ensure that it's always going to display them in the best place. Because if I put that on the inside center, it's not going to show me anything on the sprints bar. So I'm just going to always leave that as automatic, and Power BI, I'll leave it to decide what's the best way to reflect it. One more tip I can give you is to change the color of each graph, just so it's more visual and you can actually better represent the different variables that you have in your reports. So I'm going to change the color of this graph by coming to Format, Data Colors, and choose a color for each one of my variables. So I'm just going to go for different shades of yellow for this one. So I'm going to choose light yellow for my high-speed running and a darker yellow for my sprints. Perfect. And for my final graph, I'm just going to use a normal stacked bar chart again. And one more time, just put my drill title into the axis field. And I'm going for total loading for my main variable of the graph. Again, these are just examples. Feel free to use whatever metric that you think is the most useful or the most applicable for your sport or your team setting. And again, make sure you make that as an average and make any necessary changes so that your graph displays only the necessary information. So this is just a much simpler graph where I only chose one variable, and you can see that it's just displaying my total loading for each drill, and you got your data labels at the end. And finally, I'm just going to change that color a little bit. I'm just going to go for red for this one. That's it. You also have different options in terms of what graph you want to use. If you're happy with the bar charts, then very well. I think it's the one that looks the best and it gives the most concise information and feedback on our data. But you also have other options, for example, your funnel visualization. I think the funnel visualization is really good when you want to see the contribution of each drill as part of the total load. So similar to your pie chart, you can actually see the relative load in terms of how much each load represents of the total load and which one is larger or lower than the other drills. And you also have the waterfall chart, which serves as the same function. You know, it gives you a nice total bar where you can see the total of all the drills and you can see how each drill contributes to that total load. Or even your tree mat, which is not as nice looking, but it gives you a good the same idea about you got your whole load in the whole square, and you got each square representing the size of the load in terms of how much each part of the load contributes to the total load. I think those are really good when you want to break down your session into drills. It's very interesting, but I think the bar chart better represents when you want to compare between drills and you're not too concerned about the total load and you just want to compare your drills, or maybe if you have two parts of the same drill and you want to see how I did in the first part compared to my second part, I think this is the best idea. But it's completely up to you. Feel free to play around with it and decide what chart suits best your data analysis. So now, in order to update your Power BI dashboard with the most recent session you have, all you need to do is find that reports of your GPS data from your last session, and you copy and paste it into your drill database. So if I just copy and paste that here at the end of my database, all you need to do now is save that the Excel file, go back to Power BI and hit the refresh button. So that is going to synchronize my Power BI dashboard with the most recent data that I've just inputted into my Excel file. Perfect. So now you can see that if I just come here and clear my selection of drill titles and I go to my drill date, I will find that last session that I've just imported available to view on my dashboard. So you can now compare all the drills of all the different sessions for any training session that you have stored in your database. And you can even compare that between different sessions. So first of all, make sure that you always clear your selection before going to another drill date. So when I get on another drill date, say I want to compare my small study game that I did today with another drill that I did another day. I want to compare that to the 6v6 I did on another training session. I can select both of those drills and make any relevant analysis that you wish to make. So that's it for today, guys. Thanks a lot for watching the video. And if you have any comments, any feedback, or anything that you wish to see in another video, feel free to leave a comment below. Thanks.